Hello everybody and welcome back to Purgatory Ironworks. I, of course, am your host, Trenton. Now, before I get started and before anybody else sends me any more emails, I gotta say, guys, if you're enjoying this particular content, like I said, these videos are completely 100% funded by my Patreons. If you enjoy the content, if you're getting something out of it, please consider becoming a member or go over to trenton.com, buy a book, buy a hammer, support the channel so we can keep making this awesome content and so that my Patreons can stop sending me emails telling me that I need to hawk the show a little bit more. Anyway, having done that and been a dutiful person here filming videos, we're going to get into making some more tongs as we've been doing over the past couple of weeks. Now, past few videos, we've looked at box jaw tongs, which are super freaking awesome. And you saw how we converted a standard pair of flat jaw tongs into those box jaws. Now, they work. They're not beautiful, but it was a way that you could take crappy flat jaws and make them into something that worked well. Now, the issue is we really didn't have enough beef in that jaw to really make those nice box jaw wings. But thankfully, most of us are dealing with material that's no thicker than maybe a 1/2 inch, maybe even a 3/4. So you don't need those big wide wings. However, when you get into larger stock, you're going to need more beef in that tong. So today, I want to kind of show you the hard way of doing this. Now, everybody asks, what's the best way of making tongs? The best way of making tongs is under a large power hammer or steam hammer that stomps them out in 3 passes and it's done. That is the height of the industrial application of tooling. That's the best way. Most of us don't have that equipment, so we're going to have to do it the harder way. Now, what I'm going to show you guys today is I'm just going to do one side of these. I have a piece of 3/4 inch round stock, 8 inches long. This is the same stuff that we use for our other videos. And I'm going to show you how we're going to upset this end to get a little bit more beef so we can spread this guy out into the wings. Now, when you're doing the wings on the box jaw, this really needs to happen first. In the last video, we refurbished a pair, and you saw what a potential goat roping that was. Pieces were already together. I had to move one out of the way. It flopped around, tried to hit you in the wiener. It was terrible. So the right way to do these is to actually do each individual side of the tong individually before the things are put together. However, again, doing all this upsetting mess is a real pain in the hind end. However, for most of you guys that have basic equipment, that's what you're going to have to get good at. Now, in a situation like mine where I have a power hammer, you guys have heard me talk about doing this stuff from a lot heavier stock. The reason that you do it from such heavy stock is because you've got plenty of beef to start with. We're going to have a pretty good time struggling to get this backed up enough to give us enough meat to really make those nice wings on the box jaw. However, if we did it from, say, 1 inch, we'd have plenty of meat there. However, you don't want to go and try to hammer out 1 inch round stock by hand. It just ain't going to happen. 3/4 inch is really pushing it. I mean, as I've said before, anything over 1/2 inch thickness is really buddy and sledge work as opposed to what you're going to do with a single hand hammer. So, first thing we're going to do, we're going to heat this guy up, and then we're going to start upsetting this. We're going to get this guy right here real hot, about 1.25 inches, and we're just going to start tapping this using the mass of the tongs in the piece to help it back up. Probably going to do this 3 or 4 times till we get enough beef, and then we'll look at spreading everything out for the box jaw, and then I'm going to show you how to offset everything just like we did before. Now, I normally do my upsetting with a little bit of a lighter hammer. Notice how my bolt jaws are catching this piece right here, so it gives me a bit of an anvil to work on. This is going to be slow and aggravating work. So as you're working it, you want to try to keep it straight. And this really needs to be done at high heat. In fact, a lot of the old books talk about this being done at welding heat. So we're going to jump it up a little bit heat-wise and go from there. In addition to actually taking the hammer and upsetting it, there's a lot of different illustrations from back in the day of a piece actually just being lifted up and dropped onto the surface of the anvil and using the anvil itself to upset it. However, that's normally for a lot thicker material. Stuff that's this thin, relatively speaking, doesn't do well with that. So again, a lighter hammer, like the little ball peen there, I think that's a little bit under a pound, is usually going to do a good job for something like this. You're just going to have to be patient with it. All right, you can see we're swelling that up pretty nicely. I'm gonna take one more heat, and then we're gonna go. When I talked about before that the best way to do this is using the steam hammers and all that kind of good stuff, it's because it really is the best way. If you were upsetting this in an industrial factory, you'd actually have a clamp that would grab the piece and simply mush that head down, much like you would be making a nail. But again, because everything is so free-handed, we can't do that. So now we're kind of left with this goat roping to get the material where we need. Ideally, if I were doing this, I would use thicker stock. I would start with the thickest stock that I needed. So we're going to try to upset this back to maybe 1 inch and then kind of work it out. If I started with 1 inch and I had the power hammer, I could already have been done with this. All right, we have swollen this up, and that should be enough material to do what we want to do. So at this point, what's going to happen is just like we did before when we were making our tongs, the flat jaws, we're going to lay this over. We're going to use that little jig that we have for making it 3/8, and we're going to start to spread this guy out till we get to a 3/8 inch thickness. Notice again, I'm only laying off just enough. I think it's about 1.25 inches. We can adjust this later. But look how much more spread that we have now than we had the other piece. Try to keep this relatively square. And there is going to be our first jaw. Now, there is no rule saying that this entire thing has to be 3/8 of an inch thick. You know, that's just a number that I start with because that's going to be half the thickness of the tongs. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to take another heat. Now, this has always been a question for me because you see that little pooch right there? If I want to straighten that up, I can go straight to the grinder. However, if you don't have the grinding stones, you can come back in with the hammer and clean that up. And this has always been an ongoing battle with stuff that I have done because in the old days, would they have hammered it, cleaned it up, and kind of molded it like clay? Would they have ground it flush? Or would they have taken a chisel to it? And the answer is, I don't know. One of the benefits of watching a lot of the old videos, you get to see the blacksmiths doing a lot of the big work, but there's not many videos that shows the detail work or what they would do to resolve this problem. Now, if I want to say, hey, well, if you're a skilled blacksmith, we can actually hammer this thing into shape, work it around, yeah, we can do that. But is that way the smiths of antiquity would have done it? And I don't know. The truth of the matter is, most of the old pieces that I have seen, especially the tongs, unless they were factory made, were kind of crappy. I mean, they're just not great quality stuff, but they did the job. Again, I refer to something called the Master Me Refined, which was a chest of tools, Viking tools, and the tongs were terrible, but this was clearly a professional smith's tools. I'm going to keep those sides square. Now, I'm probably going to end up wanting a little bit more width here. And even though it's at 3/8, I can still spread it, but I am going to go ahead and do this number. Again, I could grind this, but since we're here doing the goat roping, might as well be all in. And we're getting a little bit closer there. All right, now, what needs to happen here is we actually need an indentation on both sides right here because we want those wings to hang off, but the main body of this still needs to be about 3/8 of an inch wide. That's what we're shooting for at least. So the question is, how do you get that little indentation? Well, that's what we're going to have a spring swage for. Just like we talked a moment ago, where we could have gone 3 ways to fix that jaw, hammering it, cutting it, or grinding it. Here we're also at one of these junctures where having somebody else in the shop would have been super handy. Now, we are going to use my super crappy swage tool to actually get those indentations on both sides, just like we were necking or fullering a regular piece. Now, the trick is that in a lot of cases, if you had a helper, you could actually hang this over the edge of the anvil, and the helper could put a set hammer in place, and you could do it that way as well. So again, here we are at this crossroads where there's 3 or 4 different ways to get where we want to go. I'm going to have to use the spring swage, or it's a swage rather, not a spring because it don't spring. But I'm going to have to use it that way because I'm here in the shop by myself, and if I want those clean corners, it's got to be the right tool. Now this is going to be a little tricky because I'm not striking this on a flat, striking it on an incline and an angle. But you can see where we're going with it. If I can get it, do what I want. Flip it over. Well, we're looking pretty good there. Now, since we've got it delineated, I can come in with some well-placed blows and start cleaning it up. Notice again, we're only moving just a little bit at a time, so I'm going to need to come in and take another couple of good smacks in there to really set those edges. Notice I'm having to kind of reset this thing every time. Okay. Now, guess what? We've got our front piece that's now nice and isolated. Square that up a little bit. And now we can come in and actually spread this and give ourselves plenty of space here without interfering with what's going to be the jaw there. So what I'm going to do is take another heat, come in with the back side of the cross peen, and start spreading that piece a little bit further. Now notice, I'm only spreading on the wing. You see the cross section there? Well, now we've got plenty, I say plenty, to be able to turn down very effectively to do what we want to do. Okay, now all we need to do at this point is we'll use our other tool like this, and we're actually going to set this bad boy over, go ahead and make our boss, and we're going to take a look. Now, if you're sharp-eyed, you've noticed I've actually changed the tool that I'm using because we've got so much extra here, I've got to have some extra height. Or you can hang it over the edge of the anvil like this, but you're going to have to accommodate those wings. Now normally this is where having the power hammer comes in super handy, because if you want to get this down to your 3/8 thickness, you just grab it by the front, drop it under a power hammer with a kiss block, and go to town. Now since we're going for the full goat roping, I want to show you yet another alternative, and that's to use an anvil block instead of the edge of the anvil. A lot of times this smaller cross section or width gives you a big advantage in being able to get in there and work the boss. Notice again, we don't have a square corner right there or even a radius corner. This is the point where a set hammer also would be super useful, but you got to have somebody else in the shop. Okay, we are looking pretty good. Still got a little bit of that inevitable twist. That twist always gets me. I almost always have to go to the vise to get rid of that. Really aggravates me. But you can see we've now got something that's very much resembling a boss. Now, if I'm being super fancy, I'll come in with a lighter hammer and I'll clean that up a good bit. When you put these things together, if there's going to be any place that binds, it's usually going to be right there. So I usually try to take a couple of extra pains to go in and make sure that that is nice and flat and flush. Or you can come in with the grinder and do it. Okay. Now I am going to flip this around and set the recess here on the back side, and we'll be ready to draw out the actual tines itself, the actual reins. Man, it's been a long day. Get us a little bit of a landing strip going on here. Then over the block. And of course, this can be done over the edge of the anvil as well. And again, I've got to tell you guys, I can't tell you how handy something like this is. Again, it just gives you a little bit of a narrow thing to work over, but it does a really good job. But guys, you can see now, even though we're a little bent up a little bit, I'm going to drop that right there just like I meant to. Don't question it. But you guys now can see we have a good side of our tongs, and we've got plenty of beef to fold this guy over to make whatever box jaws we need to. So when we fold this, it's going to look a lot better than the ones we did the other day. Will it work any better? Hey, yeah. The other ones will do a fair job, and it's probably not going to... Yeah, you know, arguably, if I was being honest, even if we've got some wider wings on this, probably going to do the same job the other pair do. This is just going to be a lot prettier. So guys, there you have it. There is our base initial box jaw. What I'll do is we'll pick this up in another video. We'll actually go ahead and finish this guy out, and like I said, I'll make sure and have the other side done. And basically, I'll show fitting this up and actually setting it to a proper piece of steel. But again, you can see so much of the work can be done before or after, and that's always the issue about trying to teach this. There are a lot of ways to do this, and even though you've heard me say time and time again, there are objectively better ways to do some things. Sometimes there's a lot of gray area, and and it depends on what equipment that you have available. At the end of the day, the best way to make these is with a giant steam hammer. It's just they can make a pair of these in like 3 seconds, and they're perfect. They're great. There are no screw ups. That's the right way to do it, but us mere mortals have to make do with what we have got. But guys, again, if you enjoyed the content, please, please, please take the opportunity to go over to TrentonTide.com. Check out the Patreon page. This educational material is bought and paid for by my Patreons. I cannot stress enough that it is because of these incredible folks that let me do this full-time on that end of it. So please, if you're getting something out of this and you want to pay it forward a little bit, consider becoming a member or get a book, buy a hammer. Please, 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 bless you, all that kind of good stuff. You know the drill. Anyway, guys, I'm excited to be able to do a lot of this work again. I hope you're getting something out of it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, and all of you guys, be safe.